Good evening, Anne and Sue. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And now let me share my slides and see if you can see the slides. Slide 2, Unit 4. Okay, can you see the slides? I'll check the chat. Okay, great. Thanks, Sue. Thanks, Anne. All right, we have Anne, Sue, Jack, Kimpar. Okay, since it's already 6:01, maybe we wait for one more minute, and if nobody shows up, if the rest don't show up, we will still continue with the lecture. Okay, one more minute. Okay. Let me just check the attendance. Let's see. One is here. Sue is here. Jack is here. Oh, Jack, you were absent in the previous class. And Kimpar is here. Kimpar, you were also absent in the previous class. Make sure that you go to the Google Classroom and read the notes. And I think they've already uploaded the videos. So the ones that you've missed, make sure you go through those videos, okay? It's good to study on time so that it doesn't pile up for you. Okay, so in today's class, we will be, before we start, okay, so if there's any problem later, like with the chat, or if you can't see my slides, someone has to voice it out because once I share my slides, I can't see the chat anymore. Okay? All right. So today we'll be studying the nervous system. The nervous system, you can tell from the name, is related to the nerves. Okay? So let's get straight into it. Okay, so in this lesson, the learning points are quite short, but if you have never studied the nervous system before, it might be a bit complex for you. But the summary is that at the end of this lecture, you should be able to state what is the role of the nervous system. So you should be able to describe what the function of this system is, and you should also be able to identify the components of the nervous system, like what makes up the nervous system. Let me proceed. Okay, let's see. And even though I didn't mention here, when we're looking at the components of the nervous system, you will also be able to see how information flows, like electrical impulses, how our body sends signals throughout the body from the brain to the other parts of the body. And how we detect changes in the environment. And you should also be able to again, going back to the first lecture, because in this one, nerve cells are involved. So you will be able to tell why the nerve cells are specifically structured the way they are, okay? Like how that structure helps them adapt to their role. Okay, so the basic, what is the nervous system? The nervous system, again, is the organ system. We've been studying a few by now. And this system, it involves sending electrical signals to regulate the body functions. And this system, yes, so this system is quite interesting, isn't it? Inside your body, there are electrical signals shooting to different parts of the body. And this will involve the brain. These are the most important parts, okay? The brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. So the nerves are the cells, the nerve cells, they're involved in this, okay? The brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves that are extending throughout the body. So let's dive deeper. Again, here's the brain. This is not like the best picture, but it is very simplified, very easy to understand, and you can search more pictures at your own sweet time. So this, let me take my laser pointer. This is the brain, and this right here is the spinal cord. And we have, so parts of the nervous system is divided into two. The central nervous system, which is very easy to remember, the brain and the spinal cord. See there, the central nervous system. And then we have the peripheral nervous system, which involves the rest of the nerves that carry information to the rest of the body. Okay, so the nerves carry information to and from the central nervous system, but this would be the main center of nerve impulses, where the nerve impulses are being generated and radiated to the rest of the body and back to the brain. Okay, let me see who just joined the class. Elizabeth is here. Okay. Okay, so moving on, my laser pointer. Okay, so the nervous system is one of the main control systems in the body, and this control system includes receptor cells, which we'll be looking at later. Don't worry if the name is so strange and new to you. The receptor cells, in brief, these are cells that receive messages, like they're the one that will be receiving or getting activated. The coordination center and the effectors. And don't worry, we'll be looking at each of it later on. Let's start with the nerve cell first. The nerve cell is the one that is the basic for this whole system, right? So the nerve cell, again, remember when I was teaching you the cells lesson, I said all cells don't have to look the same. They have their unique shapes for their unique functions. So the way they're designed is unique to their function. So this is what the nerve cell would look like. Again, this is not what it actually looks like the colors and all these. This is just a drawing to simplify it. Under the microscope, it will look different. But the structure would be still the same. You will be able to see like these dendrites and this sheet. The three main types of neurons or nerve cells, remember nerve cells are also called neurons. So the three main types of neurons or nerve cells are the sensory neurons, the motor neurons, and the relay neurons. And sensory, this one is just brief. You can, we will study this further again, but sensory is the one that senses. Okay, senses is the one that will detect or sense the change. Motor neuron is the one that reacts to the change. And then relay neuron is like a messenger between the sensory and it's like a messenger. It relays the message from central nervous system to the motor neurons, for example. So this is the relay neuron. The relay neuron is the messenger. Motor is the one that reacts. Sensory is the one that senses. Let's look at the structure of the cell one more time. So you see here, this neuron. So the long fibers, this one is the axon, this part. Let me label it for you here. This right here, this part, this is called the axon. A, X, O, N, axon. Okay, so this long part here is called the axon. And then, where did my cursor go? Oh no. Okay, here. So this long part here is the axon. And then we have a fatty sheath. This the one I've colored in green here, this fatty sheath. This one is called the myelin sheath. Okay, so let me label it there again. Need the pen. This one here is myelin sheath. M Y E L I. Oops. Okay, myelin. Let me put the small dot over the eye. Okay. Need my laser pointer back. Okay, so this is what the nerve cell looks like. You have the axon, the myelin sheath, and these funny tentacles here. They have a name as well. Let me just write it down for you, though it's not here in the slides. These ones are called, these tentacles here, they're called the dendrites. D, E, N, D, oops. Hold on, yeah. Let me see if I can connect my phone to use my board for writing. Okay, I think I need to figure out how to connect my board to my laptop. Never mind. I will do it here first, but let me know if you can't read it. I will spell it out for you as well. So this D-E-N-D-R-I-T-E, dendrite. Okay, so this, oops, just ignore that E extending. That was funny. Yeah, let me just erase this. Okay. My laser pointer. So this is the myelin. I will spell it out in case the spelling is bad. M-Y-E-L-I-N. So this is the myelin sheath, okay? It protects the axon. What is the axon? The axon is the pink long thing underneath, the pink long structure here. That's called the axon. And then these here, right here, are the dendrite. So you might wonder, why is the cell so funny looking? Why does it look so different from other cells? Like, why does it look so different from a blood cell, for example? So here's the reason. The function of a nerve cell is to carry messages, right? Or to send nerve impulses or the electrical impulses. So that's why they have these tiny branches, dendrites, or you can also, again, singular, plural, dendrons or dendrite, same thing, which branch out, and then you see the messages pass through here. So it comes here, and then it goes here. The nerve impulse or the electrical impulse goes like this. So the dendrites are the one that actually receive, and then it's passed on like this, and then it's sent to another neuron or whatever it needs to be sent to through here, the last endings. And again, why is it long? It's because our body is quite big, right? And nerve cells, since they're sending messages, they have to travel, hence this long sheath. Like they have to cover a long distance over the body. If the cells have to be longer because they're covering a lot of distance, they're sending messages. So if they're small, it will be difficult. But if it's longer, obviously it's not this long. Under the microscope, it still looks very tiny, but it's longer and stretched compared to other cells because it has to cover the distance to send the message. Okay. So that was it for the structure of the nerve cell. Again, if you have any questions, you can just type it in the chat first, and I'll have a look at it later. Okay, so how do we sense everything again? Stimulus, if you don't know this word, this means changes in the environment. So for example, light or heat or temperature change. These are all stimulus. They are changes in the environment that can cause the body to react to them. They can trigger a response. Even plants, like plants can also react to stimulus in the environment. For example, let's say if you touch something hot, that heat, that temperature change was a stimulus because it triggered a response from you. There was a change in environment that triggered a response from you. So that's what stimulus is. Again, receptor ones. Receptors are the one that receive, okay? And then receptors, like let's say your sensory organs or sensory cells in your fingers. Let's say there was something hot. You touch something hot, And then the receptors in your body, the cells, the sensory cells, sense that message, the heat. So what happened was the receptor, you don't know what to do yet, right? The receptor will send that change in the environment to the sensory neurons. And then the sensory neurons will convey it to here. The relay neuron, again, is relaying the message, okay? So sensory neuron, the relayed neuron relayed the message here. The relay neuron then carried the message to the central nervous system. And then the motor neurons were, so the central nervous system decided that you need to move. The motor neuron is the one that's going to cause the action. Okay, it's going to trigger the body to act. So the motor neuron relayed the message, effector neuron. They are specialized, effectors are specialized cells, effector cells that carry out the response to stimulus. So the effector cells decide to, let's say, contract. Your fingers have to move. So your muscles had to contract, and that was your response. So it all starts from receiving some change in the environment, right? Receiving that change, and then your neurons, the sensory neurons, detecting that and sending it, relaying that to the nervous system through the relay neurons, and then the nervous system deciding, the central nervous system deciding what to do. And the motor neurons are the ones that are like, okay, it's time to act. Like they're the ones that will cause the action, motor act. And then you will have the effectors, the specialized cells in your body, respond to that message that came, and hence there was a response. Okay, with this said, let's go deeper one by one. So we start with the receptor again. That was just the overall picture. Receptors. Okay, receptors. So receptors, again, they detect or receive the stimulus. Okay, stimulus again is change in the environment that causes us to respond. So the receptors are the ones that will detect the stimulus. They detect the change. They detect something different happen. For example, the skin, the receptors in the skin, they can detect touch, pain, or temperature. And then because of that detection of the receptors, it will stimulate electrical impulses. So this is the message being sent as electrical impulse, that there has been a change in the environment. And then the sensory organs that contain the receptor, for example, the skin, or the hands, or the tongue, like if it was something was hot in the tongue, based on wherever that change happened, a response will take place to that specific change that happens. So if you put something hot in your mouth, you may spit it out. If you touch something hot or something sharp, you will immediately remove your hand. So now I'm going to show you a video I made. We'll have a look at that video and see if hope that it makes it easier for you. Okay, let's go. Let me find the video it was. Okay, here. So watch this video. Hi, in this video we'll briefly learn about pain. We will learn what pain is and why and how do we feel pain. So let's get started. According to the International Association for the Study of Pain, it is an unpleasant sensory and emotional experience associated with actual or potential tissue damage or described in terms of such damage. However, in 2019, a new definition has been proposed, but in this video we'll focus on sensory experience caused by actual damage. Now, imagine a world without pain. At first, the idea sounds quite cool, but you'll probably end up leaning on a beehive or walk around with a staple pierced in your foot and not know about it until it caused an infection and changed the appearance of your foot. So pain helps us by warning us of potential dangers and identifying damaged body parts. Now the big question, how do we feel pain? To give you a rough idea, when you hurt yourself, receptors in the body detect that damage and sends it to the spinal cord. and then to specific areas on the brain. This whole process of sensing pain is called nociception. Noci comes from the Latin word nocere, which means to harm. So the receptors that detect the harm are called nociceptors. There are three neurons involved in this pathway. A typical neuron structure looks something like this. The sensory neuron looks like that. So neurons have dendrites, cell body, axons, and axon terminal. The dendrites receive the message, and the axon terminal pass on a message. The cross-section of a spinal cord looks something like this. So the second-order neuron passes through it in such a manner. Now I'm going to show you a homemade model, but please pause the video to read the disclaimers. The structures involved in this model are the unknown damaged tissue, the nociceptor or the first-order neuron, the second-order neuron, which is in the spinal cord, and the third-order neuron in the thalamus in the brain. And then you'll have the somatosensory cortex. When a tissue is damaged, it secretes chemicals. These chemicals trigger the nociceptor, and the message that a tissue has been damaged starts moving through the axon. The message moves to the spinal cord, where the axon terminal secretes chemical messengers called neurotransmitters. These bind to the dendrites of the second-order neuron, and the signal starts moving along the axon of the second-order neuron, ascending through the spinal cord towards the brain. In the brain, it specifically arrives to this green region called the thalamus. In the thalamus, it secretes neurotransmitters which bind to the third-order neuron to stimulate it, and the signals will start passing to the somatosensory cortex. The somatosensory cortex pinpoints which tissues and where exactly were they damaged. It's like a map of the body in the brain. Here's a more detailed picture of the somatosensory cortex. Focus on the region in blue and notice how different regions senses different parts of the body. For example, the eyes and the nose are sensed by different regions. Let's see what tissues were damaged in our model. It's the right cheek. Thanks to your brain, you realize something is wrong because you felt the pain. But little did you know that it's not in the cheek itself, but because of the activity in the brain. Another interesting fact to notice is how the right side of your body is being detected by the left side of your brain. This happens because the second-order neuron crosses from the right side of the spinal cord towards the left. So notice it going from the right of the spinal cord and ending up in the left. So the message ends up in the left side of the brain. So to summarize it all, although pain is an unpleasant sensation, it helps us avoid stimulus that may harm our body and recognize damaged body parts. Damaged tissues are detected by nociceptors, which then inform the second-order neuron in the spinal cord to inform the third-order neuron in the thalamus in the brain, and finally the somatosensory cortex, which processes the information and causes you to experience the sensation of pain in that specific body part. Thank you. That's it for our video. Okay, so that was just a brief video of how our body senses pain. So you saw the different neurons relaying the message and how we reacted. And again, if it wasn't for the nervous system, you wouldn't feel that pain. So imagine something, a nail pierced your foot, or there's a sharp glass that has entered your foot. But because you didn't, but if the nervous system was not there, you wouldn't know that something has pierced your foot or that you're in pain. So that's why the nervous system is actually very important. Aside from helping us move around and thinking and our intelligence, it also keeps us safe. Okay, so we already studied the receptors. Receptors are the ones that will they're specialized in detecting the changes in the environment, the stimulus. Okay. Effectors, for example, muscles and glands. So effectors, they are specialized in producing a response. For example, when your muscles contract and you move your hand, or for example, when you see food When you see really good food, and it smells good, and you see the visual, the smell, you start to salivate. Like you can start feeling your saliva coming into your mouth. That's because of effectors as well, the glands in your mouth, saliva glands. So those would be effectors. Okay, there's also something called reflex. Reflex is an automatic and rapid response to a stimulus. So reflex is because it's so immediate and it has to immediately protect someone from danger. The action does not involve the conscious part of the brains. So that's why it happens so quickly. So I'm going to share another video. Let me turn on the video. So in that video, you see a doctor, like when the doctor hits your kneecap, somewhere around the knee, and the leg just goes up without the person even controlling it. Let me share it with you. Okay, so this video might be a bit, it's just like 1 minute video. Let me know. Please don't skip. Oops. Okay, wait, hold on. Let me show you the reflex video of a bicep tendon, okay? Let's see. Let me share my screen again. Where did it go? Zoom. Okay, let's see it. Okay, do you see the video? Do you see the video?
Tendon reflex we're going to check is the bicep tendon. And the bicep tendon is located below the bicep muscle in the antecubital fossa area. You're beginning out, what you want to do is you want to find that tendon. So to find the tendon, we are going to have the patient flex the arm and flex the bicep, and you will find it right in there, and it feels like a cord-like area. Whenever you find it, just put your thumb over it. And this is going to elicit a response of C5 to C6. So I have my thumb over the tendon area, and I'm going to have him relax the muscle and just drape his forearm over his lap. And then I'm just going to hit with my hammer briskly. And what you're looking for is contraction of the bicep and flexion of the forearm. And we had a little bit of a response, and there we go. Okay, so that is how you check that.
Okay, so that was for the bicep. You see the person wasn't consciously moving his arm when it got hit. It was moving up by itself. Someone just joined the class. Okay. Now we will see the one with the knee, which is actually the one with the knee, which is actually more interesting. So again, this one is not a conscious response. It happens too fast. Reflex. So it's called a knee jerk. Okay. Let's see.
This video demonstrates.
Let me share my screen again. So first one we saw was the biceps in the arm. Now we saw the reflex in the lower parts.
Demonstrates the lower extremity reflex examination. To perform the patellar tendon or knee jerk reflex, have the patient seated with her legs dangling and off the floor. Tap briskly over the patellar tendon, inferior to the patella with the knee flexed. You should observe knee extension. Alternatively, this reflex can be performed with the patient in the supine position by supporting the knee in slight flexion and tapping over the patellar tendon. To perform the medial hamstring reflex on a patient in the seated position, slightly externally rotate and abduct the thigh. Then, place your finger over the tendons of semimembranosus and semitendinosus, the medial hamstring tendons, and tap briskly. You should observe contraction of the medial hamstrings or knee flexion.
To perform the Achilles tendon or ankle jerk reflex, have the patient seated with her legs dangling and off the floor.
This one is for the
Place the
ankle.
foot
You
in
see
slight
reflex in the
dorsiflexion and tap
ankle.
briskly over the Achilles tendon. You should observe plantar flexion. Alternatively, this maneuver can be performed with the patient kneeling or with the patient supine, again by ensuring slight dorsiflexion of the ankle prior to heel strike.
Okay, so that was reflex. Again, that is interesting because it's not conscious response. The person is not intentionally doing that. Okay. Let's go back to our slides. So that was the gist of this lecture. So reflex. Just see. Wait, why is okay, I noticed some of you just joined, so I'm going to briefly share what we have covered so far. Okay, let's go back to the start. Okay, so in this lecture, we studied the nervous system. I'm going to give you the brief summary all over again, and then after this is your turn to ask questions if you have any questions, not just from this lecture, but also from the previous lectures. Okay, so the nervous system, we are focusing on the role of the nervous system. So by the end of the lecture, now that we've gone through everything, you should be able to describe what the function of the nervous system is, what is its role, and you should also be able to share what the components of the nervous system are, which is the brain, the spinal cord, the nerves, and then a bit deeper into what the nerve looks like. What the spinal cord is like, and the different types of nervous systems. So what is the nervous system? Again, it is one of the systems, very specialized system in the body that involves sending electrical signals to regulate the body's functions. And we saw just now, without the nervous system, you wouldn't be able to react or act to any dangers in the environment. And this system, the main very important parts of this system include the brain, the spinal cord, and the nerves. And the nervous system, again, as mentioned earlier, it has two parts, the central nervous system. So the brain and the spinal cord, this is the central nervous system. This is what it includes. And then you have the peripheral nervous system, which includes nerves that carry information to and from the central nervous system. So information to the central nervous system or from the nervous system, central nervous system. Okay, central nervous system, peripheral nervous system. And then the control systems. So how is this whole system actually controlled? So it includes the receptor cells. These are specialized cells that receive the change in the environment. The stimulus is the change in the environment, and the receptor cells are the one that detect the change. Okay, they're very specialized. They could be on your fingertips and your tongue, anywhere in the body. Then the coordination center is involved, and you also have the effectors. Okay, effectors for the action, the coordination center, the one deciding, okay, what actions should be taken. And the nerve cells, we again studied that the nerve cell has a very unique structure. It has the dendrites, these tentacles that receive the nerve impulse. And then this here is the cell body. And then it has this unique structure, this long dipping underneath, the axon, which passes on the electrical impulse to these nerve endings. And then these endings will then pass that electrical message to the next neurons. There are many neurons. Neurons are nerve cells, again, in case you forgot. And the myelin sheath here, this is like a fatty sheath that surrounds the axon to protect it. Okay. And then we looked at the overall picture on how this works. So again, Stimulus are changes in the environment. So whenever there's a change in the environment and receptors come in contact with that change, whether it be something sharp or temperature change or even loud sounds. So the stimulus will be detected by the receptors. Receptors are specialized cells. Remember that they receive this change in environment. And then this change in environment, the signal is sent to the sensory neurons. So the sensory neurons, they sense that something has happened. So the sensory neuron, it will pass the message on to the relay neuron and ask it to relay to the central nervous system, which is the brain and spinal cord. So this one is like, this is the messenger. So the relay neuron delivered that message to the central nervous system, and the central nervous system decides on what has to be done, okay? And the motor neurons will carry out that function. So the motor neuron will carry out that function. So for example, you touch something sharp, okay, and it cut your finger. The receptors sense that, okay, there is a cut in the finger, there's some chemicals being released. It informed the sensory neuron, sensory neuron got triggered. Okay, that, okay, something has happened, but the sensory neuron doesn't know what to do. It just tells the relay neuron that something has happened. The relay neuron will send that message to the central nervous system. Central nervous system, again, is the brain and the spinal cord, okay? And the central nervous system, the brain decides what needs to be done. And the motor neurons will take that action. So the brain decided, okay, something sharp has cut the finger and the brain felt the pain. You now start feeling the pain. So your motor neurons have been informed to take an action, to respond to that change that happened. And this can happen because of the effectors in your body. Effectors are, again, specialized cells that carry out the action, okay, carry out the response. So when you see people who have who have damaged nervous system, either because of genetics or because of accidents, sometimes people lose the system can get affected. So for example, the brain for a person who is paralyzed below their legs, for example, they don't their motor neuron may not be as effective anymore or may not even function properly. So in that case, they won't be able to carry out a response. So they may be in pain, but they would need help because their effectors, their motor neurons effectors are no longer functioning properly. So external help would be needed. Yes, that would be just one example. Okay, receptors, again, we study. So here the receptors, the ones that actually detect, sense, they receive the sense, they sense change. They are specialized, they're very specialized, they detect the change. They also stimulate electrical impulse, they trigger that impulse. And one example of sensory organ that contains a lot of these receptors is the skin. Yeah, your tongue also, 5 senses. And examples of stimulus or stimuli are these. These are just few, there are more than these. Okay, and effectors, again, specialized cells that actually respond. So muscles, they contract and they relax, so they know how to respond. If someone, if you're not in danger and if everything is okay, there will still be some form of response. Like for example, when you relax, that's also a kind of response, your muscles relax. Glands, the example I gave was when you see nice food, you smell the nice food, you start salivating, for example. So that would be one example of effectors. And again, effectors are very specialized cells and they produce a targeted response to a detected stimuli. So it's targeted based on whatever change is happening and again, which organ is involved. Okay. And lastly, we studied the reflex. Reflex, again, is an automatic and rapid response to a stimulus that doesn't happen with consciously. It doesn't involve the conscious part of the brain. So you see, this is the spinal cord, okay? It didn't go to the brain. The action happened immediately. So it wasn't something that happened consciously where you thought about it and then you reacted to it. No, it happened so fast. It happened so fast that even you don't know what just happened. Like when we saw that video of the doctor hitting the tendons near the knee, the person's leg goes up, but it's not, the person is not intentionally doing that. It happens by itself. So even if you don't want to have a reflex, you can't control it. It just happens. And we saw a video, and here are the resources and references. You can refer to these. And again, I encourage that you also go do your own research aside from these resources and reference. I understand some of you don't have that much time, and if you're better at visuals, then I recommend that you go and watch YouTube videos as well. Okay, so that's it for the lecture. Do you all have any questions? Sue asked, what more do the relay neurons do? Does it only send information to central nervous system? So again, yes, its main job is to send the information to the central nervous system. It's the messenger. Hold on. Relay neurons. Let's go to the relay neurons. Here, the relay neurons. So for this level, you need to know that its job is to relay the message to the central nervous system. And again, if we go deeper, so this is really brief about the nervous system. If you want to go deeper, there's a lot more to study, like the different structures of the brain and which message goes to which part of the brain, and the sensory part the somatosensory cortex that you saw in the video, but those are not covered in the syllabus, so this I'm not touching it. But if you're interested, you can definitely go read more about it. You can also read about some conditions where scientists still haven't found the cure to, like for example, Alzheimer's. In Alzheimer's, why do some people actually forget? And what is happening to their brain that they're forgetting their memories? Why is their memory distorted? So all those, again, it's a very interesting system. And if you had the time, I don't think you would ever have the time to actually fully discover this system now, but it's always interesting to read more about it. You're welcome, Sue. Yeah, are there any more questions? Anyone has any questions from the previous topics? Yes, Elizabeth? Okay, while Elizabeth is typing her question, the rest of you also, if you have any questions, you can type it out. Why is the axon so long? And asked. Okay, so it's as we mentioned just now, the body is really complex and it's long, right? Cells are very small. Obviously, even the nerve cell is very small under the microscope, but if you look at its structure, it's long. The axon is quite long. It makes the cell, this is the cell body, and then you see the cell extending like this. So Anne asked, why is the cell, like, why is it extending? Why is the axon so long? Again, it's because, you can go read more on this, but it's because the body is big and the cell has to relay messages. Okay, so imagine, okay, how do I put it in a very simple way? Okay, imagine you need to cover, like you have to cross a river, okay? And you want to attach a rope from one side to the other, okay? You need to go from one side of the river to the other side, and you want to make you want to tie ropes together so that you can connect to the other side. Do you want short ropes or do you want long ropes? Which one is better? Long ropes. Yeah, you want long ropes because you want to travel faster to the other side, right? You want to be able to travel to the other side. If it's small, it's going to take time for you to do that. But if it's long rope, it connects faster. In the same way, you see it's so long. This axon compared to other cells, it's so long. And it's because of the exact same reason, because the message has to be carried from one place to another place. And this cell is the one that's carrying that message. That electrical impulse is being carried from one part to another part, to another part, to another part. It has to travel like that. So if you have longer cells, it helps. The structure is adapted to do that. It's to carry out its function more efficiently. Does that make sense? And Sue, does that make sense now?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's exactly why it's longer compared to other cells. Okay, those are very interesting questions, by the way. Any more questions? Let me see who else is here. Jack, do you have any questions? I know you missed the previous lecture, but these are like different systems, so it's okay if you missed the previous one, you will still understand this one, but you still need to go back to read the other one. But if you missed that one and you're joining this one, you will not miss much on this one. Maybe some of the terminology would be difficult. Jack, so if you have any questions, Jack, feel free to ask. John, Elizabeth. Kimpar, Cheyenne was in the chat. Yeah, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask now. Also, this is our second last session for this anatomy and physiology class. The next one for this module will be the last related to anatomy and physiology. Okay, thanks, Jay. Thanks, John. So the next, so if no more questions regarding this lecture, the next one is the muscular system. Let me just stop sharing the screen first so I can see the chat easily. Okay, so far we have covered the first topic was know how the body systems are organized. We studied about the very basic cell, tissue, organ system. And then we started with the systems. So the second lecture was our first system, which was the respiratory system. And then we studied the cardiovascular system. And today we studied the nervous system, and the next one will be the last for the systems for this anatomy and physiology of the body module. The next one is the skeletal system, but we'll also be touching the muscular system with it. So it will include the skeleton and the muscles, skeletal system, and a little bit of the muscular system. Yeah, so it will be two systems at once. You're most welcome, Anne. Okay, so that's it for today's lesson. Do you have any more questions? Let me see if any questions in the chat. No questions. I have put the resources there, including the YouTube video link, which you can check out at your own sweet time. Yeah, I will put the link to my channel as well, even though you don't really need to check that out because the level might be different. Okay, so if there's no more questions, you are free to leave the class. Yeah, but if you have any questions that you want to ask, then you can just stay back. Okay, no worries, and then have a good day. Thanks, Sue. You have a nice day too. You're welcome, Kimpar. Elizabeth, do you have any questions? No questions. You're most welcome. You're welcome to leave the class early then. Thank you. You have a good weekend too.